Preemptive work that took place prior to the shoot was very much me sitting in front of books on Iran, in particular Rolf Benny, Bridge of Turquoise, and I had all this time on my hand, right? I took out all these Barbie dolls from my childhood and I started playing around with them and placing them in front of these photographs and then shooting them with my camera. And it was that game in itself, actually, which very much was derived from boredom, leading back to a sense of nostalgia and melancholic sort of aspirations of my past, a past which I lost because I never went back to Iran. I haven't been back since 1978, was the precursor to this. The Barbie doll became real, and the location is an alliteration. It's a metaphoric ode, in a sense, to my own country, to Persian culture in Iran. A lot of the bulk of what is going on here in this particular series is an invitation au voyage. You are invited to an imaginary voyage, to another wonderland, to another land, basically. I had the pleasure of meeting Anne-Sophie when I was making a book about 4 years ago in the East End, East End Creativity. And really Anne-Sophie was a splash of color. And we had so much fun, you know, exploring design, exploring color, exploring, you know, the significance of creativity in the East End. And we've now continued a lot of our work together. We've done many projects. And in particular, in this project, I thought your effervescence, your sense of design, your sense of beauty, and your sense of detail would come in really in perfect conjunction with the story of Once Upon a Turquoise Past. We shot this, as you remember, during a moment of pandemic, and we were all so closed up in our homes, in our minds, and so when we had access to Leighton House, it was almost like children let loose in some sort of playground or fantasy land. And in fact, a few of the images really were direct references to Lewis Carroll and to Alice in Wonderland. It is very much about falling down the rabbit hole and about just letting yourself and your spirit and your soul free, really, on many levels. Yeah. So we were very lucky that day because we had sunlight, which, you know, in November is a rare opportunity in London. And it was such a wonderful way of using light. I usually like to paint with light in my photography. And the idea that we had this, you know, blessing of this sublime light that was coming through the Mashrabiyas at Leighton House allowed us really to add a bit of fluffiness and playfulness to our photographs, as you can see.
I would say it's a more oriental version of my work because lots of my work is like pop and colorful. This was definitely more oriental.
The title of this particular piece is Set Me Free, and I think it's very, very emblematic of the moment at which we shot this, which was in the middle of the pandemic, when we were all stuck at home and we were all dying, gasping for air and gasping for, you know, getting out of these frames and these windows. And Anne-Sophie's design here, accessory with the, what is this? A cockatoo, exactly, adds, you know, that sort of fantasy flavor of wanting to fly out effectively.
And it's really getting out of the frame. And I think it's also a broadly more like a feminist a comment on this woman that, you know, in parallel of this painting, which you have this like old middle-aged man and this woman that look quite submissive and it's more traditional painting. and in front you have this young modern woman dressed in a very kind of eccentric way with is it a prom dress?
Yes, it's a 1950s American prom dress, which I found in Boston a few years ago.
So she's going out of the frame where in this society we've been told to, fit in and, stay in our place and not take too much room, and is literally
Bursting out.
Yeah, bursting out.
Image here is a direct referencing to New York, which is where I lived for 10 years. In the sort of mid-80s to early 90s. And as you know, there was a huge exuberance of culture that was happening. And it was mainly through the club scene, the music scene, where really on so many levels, the club scene, art, music, all sort of intermingled. And it was the moment when clubs like Palladium and Area were happening, and I used to attend these clubs, and I remember distinctly walking down the corridor of Area with two vitrines on either side, and these vitrines were done by the likes of Andy Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat. The majority of the pieces are small, they're more miniature-like, in a setting, in a showroom that emphasizes design, and in a more homey kind of environment, whereby the customer, the client, can come and almost imagine these pieces in their own homes. So the idea that you can actually come here, sit on beautiful pieces of furniture, take a moment, reflect, and enjoy is, I think, a much more interesting way of looking at art than, having to stand in a very clinical, sanitized environment. David Linley came to see my show in June of this year on Capri, and he was quite enthralled by the show. And he approached me there and then and asked me if I had a series that I hadn't shown before. And I was really excited about this particular series. It's quite amazing that actually David Linley is the great-grandson of Edward Linley Sanborn himself. So there's actually a natural connection to the house, to Leighton House. And he's an ambassador for the house, he's very much involved with the house. And it's quite amusing actually that this happened because it wasn't planned. And it's just a perfect, story basically. That adds to the exhibition and adds to David's involvement, and it's been a real joy to work with him and to work with Linley in general.